day, everyone. Today we will learn about variables, the purpose of it and on how to write variables in a sentence. But before we go to the deeper understanding of it, let me first remind everyone to listen carefully and any questions will be entertained at the end of the discussion. Variable stands crucial to the mathematical understanding because it is not only representing a value, but also a degree of phase, where it makes mathematics a ground for a simplified clarity of a matter. To further understand it, let's go to the next slide. We have here a question and it is, what is variable? Variable, in algebra, a symbol, usually a letter, standing in for an unknown numerical value, in an equation. Also in mathematics, a variable is a symbol, which works as a placeholder for expression or quantities that may vary or change. It is a placeholder because it caters a specific representation. In continuation, variable is often used to represent the argument of a function or an arbitrary element of a set. For an example, the picture you see on your screen, the x is a variable because it represents a particular function in an equation, and is subject to be substituted with any numbers applicable to it. Hence, the representation is in the form of letter. I will show you an example to really vision what I want you to understand. For example, you have a job in a restaurant, and you are earning 10 pesos every hour and tips every hour. Because in our example the tips doesn't have a fixed value, for it depends on the amount that the customer will give. So, we can infer that 10 plus the tips is your salary per hour. In here the tips is a variable because it represents a value. Assuming that the tips is 30 pesos, then you will substitute the 30 to our variable tips, and you have 40 pesos tips. And if we also assume that you will receive a 5 tips per hour, then you will only have 15 salary in an hour. Just remember, you can use any variable to represent a specific and changing value. Here we use tips as variable, but you can also use a star or x, it all depends on you, as long as you know what it represents. These are some of the popular variables used in mathematical representation. And I know you do know x because you have one. In general, variable is just a symbol that can represent different values in an expression, which can be in any form. And you can create your own variable for your own, but we need to always use the formal symbol that is accepted in mathematical terms for everyone to understand it. And now we go to the purpose of using variables. So what is the purpose of using variables? Variables helps us to reason about values in a well-defined and clear way. If you have a question why? Because if we use variables, we eliminated some of the words of representation and limit the use of many words in forming a calculation. For example, here the formula of getting a force was represented by a variable using F for force, M for mass and A for acceleration. If we use the same formula and have a wordy, mathematical representation, then it would be force is mass times acceleration. This may seem alright if used in a mathematical equation, because this is not quite lengthy. Imagine you have many things to consider, like the derivation of many elements in algebra, and if you will use words in the presentation of the calculation of it, it seems to be chaotic and will be congested with many words, and I think one piece of paper will never be enough. And you might not understand the proceed of your calculation because your paper is forested with many acronyms. So, it is important to use variables to present a calculations for it to be precise and clear to understand. How to use a variables in writing a sentence. So, now we will be incorporating the use of variables into sentence. Every language has its vocabulary and its rules for combining these words into complete thoughts. Mathematics is no exception. The language of mathematics makes it easy to express the kinds of thoughts that mathematicians like to express. It is precise, able to make very fine distinctions, concise, able to say things briefly, and powerful, able to express complex thoughts with relative ease. But before diving into the writing variables in a sentence, let me first introduce you to mathematical expression, because it somewhat have the thing that will help us into incorporating the use of variables. What is mathematical expression? It is combining numbers and variables in a valid way, using operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponentiation, and other operations. which indeed are mere expressing a mathematical sentences into equation that we understand today as part of algebra. This is some sort of examples in doing the mathematical expression. Sum of x and 12 can be expressed as x plus 12. Difference of x and 12 can be expressed as x minus 12. 4 greater than b can be expressed as b plus 4, while 4 less than b can be expressed as b minus 4. 6 more than y can be also expressed as y plus 6. 7 subtracted from y can be expressed as y minus 7. 44 plus r can be expressed as 44 plus r. And lastly, 44 minus r can be expressed as 44 minus r. This is some sort of examples in doing the mathematical expression. So, now we already know mathematical expression. Let's go back to the writing a sentence using variables. I have here one example and let's dig it in. Our sentence is, are there numbers with the property that the sum of their squares equals the square of their sum? To transform some words into variables, let us have first an intelligent investigation of the sentence, to identify a particular set of variables to be used. We can see in the sentence the phrases their numbers, which is an obvious clue for us to assume that there are two separated mathematical numbers, for numbers is in plural form. The sum of their square in the sentence only state that the two mathematical numbers is separated with a plus sign. And also each number is in squares. The phrases equals the square of their sum does means that the first variables that we have is equals with the two mathematical numbers added together in which result is squared. So, now we assume the use of a and b variables to represent in our created equation. This also the initiated variables for the two separated numbers. Following all of our investigation, we can vividly infer that the equation in the sentence is represented in a square plus b square equals a plus b square, and now knowing the variables to be used in a sentence, we can now substitute the wordy sentence expression of the sentence into variables. As we look at here, the question, are there numbers with the property that the sum of their squares equals the square of their sum, can be in a form of sentence with variables, which can be transformed into, are there numbers a and b with the property that a square plus b square equals a plus b square. Alright. We have made a sentence using variables. Writing sentence in variables is quite intrinsic because you need to clearly understand mathematical expression in the sentence, while logic and analysis is in real need. However, having to clearly understand it will really give you a great day, because it is a fun thing to do. Variables and writing sentence in a variable is complicated if you will not focus onto every detail of it, and not understanding the sole definition of variable. Because as what majority will said, a simple knowledge will bring you a new stare for a new learning. So, to appropriately get the concept, we need to master the basic idea of what variables are. Thank you for listening, and I hope you had learned something in my discussion. This is J. Lodigan Silo, your first reporter. Thank you and God bless you all.